the prehistoric, unforgettable other person who is never equaled by anyone later.
I am, that is, I desire, only because of someone else. I am, that is, I am driven, only because I cannot forget, even as I cannot remember, that someone else. My very being is a question. What do you want with me?
This force is sadistic in that it taps into the anarchic, unbinding properties of the sexual drive, and it is exigent in the sense that it has to do with following without reserve the draw toward opacity. It entails a recognition that one has to do what is necessary, though not in the utilitarian sense, to intervene against mastery, exerting a certain violence on the ego's tendency to bind.
I am driven by the other I cannot forget and cannot remember. I bind myself. I try to master this being driven by the other I cannot forget and cannot remember. But if I succeed, what then? I keep going, I keep desiring, only because I never fully succeed. For better, for worse, but which is which? I live in the failure of my attempts to bind the drive.
The unconscious is the other thing in me, the repressed residue of the other person. It affects me as the other person affected me long ago.
What I cannot forget and cannot remember is that those who held me and fed me and spoke to me when I was a helpless child were full of desire unknown to themselves. Their opacity to themselves drove me into my own opacity to myself.
The initial helplessness of human beings is the primal source of all moral motives.
Why do I now care? Care for others, care for myself, care for anything at all? And why is that care always ambivalent? Never straightforward, but nevertheless inexorable? Because I was cared for when I could not care for myself, cared for by others who were strangers to themselves. I am now a stranger to myself, driven to care.
That opening can be maintained, transported outside itself toward other fields of alterity and inspiration, a transference of the relation to the enigma as such.
Where can I now become again? Where and how can I be driven anew? The enigma that first drove me is everywhere and everyone. Why do we make art? To once again be driven by the enigmatic other. We make art, we seek out art, to once again feel the texture of being driven. What do you want with me? What is happening to me?
Innocence still is, but only a word is required and then ignorance is concentrated. Innocence naturally cannot understand this word, but at that moment anxiety has, as it were, caught its first prey. Instead of nothing, it now has an enigmatic word. When it is stated in Genesis that God said to Adam, "Only from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil must you not eat," it follows as a matter of course that Adam has not understood this word. For how could he understand the difference between good and evil when this distinction would follow as a consequence of the enjoyment of the fruit?
In the beginning, in the garden, Adam and Eve heard from God an enigmatic word. In the beginning, in infancy, we all hear the enigmatic word.
If one were to say further that it then becomes a question of how the first man learned to speak, I would answer that this is very true, but also that the question lies beyond the scope of the present investigation. However, this must not be understood in the manner of modern philosophy, as though my reply were evasive, suggesting that I could answer the question in another place. But this much is certain, that it will not do to represent man himself as the inventor of language.
Where does language come from? Where does desire come from? Did the human being give itself language, give itself desire? We give each other language, we give each other desire, but who or what gave it to us?
There remains the serpent. I am no friend of cleverness and shall, God willing, resist the temptations of the serpent, who at the dawn of time when he tempted Adam and Eve, has in the course of time tempted writers to be clever. Instead, I freely admit my inability to connect any definite thought with the serpent.
God put the serpent in the garden. Those who cared for me put the serpent in me, made my instinct to preserve myself into a drive. Drive is instinct curled on itself, serpent-like, deviated from a straight line that knows what it wants. Nobody knows what they want. Nobody knows where the serpent came from or where it goes.
After these things God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham," and he said, "Here I am." He said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I shall show you."
Every child goes to Moriah, is taken to Moriah to receive its birthright, the drive that makes it a stranger to itself.
You shall love the neighbor.
You shall love the enigma in the other. You shall love your own enigma.
Socrates certainly was an eroticist of the highest order. He had an extraordinary enthusiasm for knowledge. In short, had all of spirit's seductive gifts, but in form, fill up, enrich, he could not do. In this sense, one would dare perhaps to call him a seducer. He infatuated the youths, awoke longings in them, but did not satisfy them, let them flare up in the thrilling enjoyment of contact, but never gave them strong and nourishing food.
The artist is here to seduce us, to reignite the enigma, to repeat an encounter with the other we cannot forget and cannot remember. Art never satisfies us, or if it does, it's not art. Art makes us hungry, makes us want we know not what. The noble rogue was conscious, and it is true, that he had done the other person the greatest beneficence. He was conscious of how he had worked just for this, of what time and industry and art it had taken to deceive the other into the truth. And when the work was completed, he said very softly to himself, "Now this individual is standing by himself." But then we come to the dash, and with the dash a smile comes upon the lips of that noble yet roguish one, and he says, "Now this individual is standing by himself through my help." He keeps to himself the secret of this indescribable smile. Truly there is not a trace of evil in this smile. He is conscious that what he has done is well-intentioned. He is conscious that it is truly a beneficence and is truly the only way in which it can be done. But the smile, that is still the self-consciousness of ingenuity. The artist is tempted to think they are a master, that they produce or control the enigma. The attempt to control the enigma turns art into propaganda.
To become involved with God in any other way than being wounded is impossible.
To become involved with art in any other way than being wounded is to make art into propaganda. Art wounds us because it makes us want we know not what.